everyone, and welcome to the first in our new monthly series of JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services training webinars. Today, we will be talking about advanced features in stewardship. My name is Elizabeth Behrens, and I am a product education lead at Ithaca, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Remus Jackson, who will be helping answer questions after today's training. This webinar will be recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel, and the link to the recording will be sent to all registrants by email. After you exit the webinar today, you will be taken to a brief survey, and we'd appreciate hearing your thoughts about how helpful this was for you. We are here to support you as you begin to use stewardship, so we want to know what is working and what more you need in terms of training and education resources. We will be rotating 3 topics in these training webinars throughout 2026. The topics are advanced features, project administration, and project cataloging. And your feedback is very valuable as we continue this series. If you don't have time to take the survey immediately, it will also be sent to you by email in about an hour. We read every comment and really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. So here is today's agenda. The features we will be looking at today are mostly around complex relationships you can build between your records and assets by using compound objects, containers, and compilations. After that, we will take a look at building a collection from an existing spreadsheet using the Collection Builder tool in Stewardship. Please note there's a questions box in your go-to panel where you can enter questions at any time. We should have time for questions at the end of the training, but feel free to enter questions as they pop up in your mind. Remus is going to share a link now in the chat to the webinar handout, which contains helpful resources on the stewardship support site. We're going to update the handout after this webinar with a link to the recording and summaries of the questions asked and their answers from the webinar today. So you can just use that same link and it will be updated over the next couple of days. I am going to turn my camera off now so you'll be able to see the details on my screen a little bit better. We'll get started. And I'm going to go ahead and put that. I'm not sure if the handout went through in the chat yet, but I'm going to put it in so you can take a look at it. Okay. All right, so we're going to start first with compound objects. A compound object is a single record that contains multiple image files. Compound objects are useful for items like multi-page manuscripts, newsletters, as seen here in this example from LaGuardia Community College's newsletter from 1982, postcards where you'd like to include the front and back of the postcard within the same record, or other objects where it would make sense to have a single record with multiple media assets. One limitation to keep in mind with compound objects is you can't mix media types, and you can only use image or PDF files. So for example, you can't have a PDF and an image file in the same record. You can only have multiple image files or multiple PDF files in one compound object record. On JSTOR, the item record looks like any other single item record with one set of metadata, but you can advance through the associated images within that record. So I'm going to open up that, oh, sorry, I opened it the wrong window. The same record on JSTOR right here. So here's that record of that newsletter. There are 16 files in this single record, and I can see them all by scrolling down to select one of the images, or I can advance between them by using the arrows on either side of the image window, the viewer window. So next we'll go into stewardship to learn how to create a compound object. So here we are in stewardship. So there are a couple of ways to create a compound object in stewardship. If you have an existing item with an image file and you'd like to add additional image files to it, you can just upload additional image files to that same record. So I'm going to open up this project for an example. So for example, I have a record here in my project right here. This is the Andy Warhol installation called Silver Clouds. And I have a couple more photos of this installation that I'd like to include. So I've opened my record, and then I'm going to go to Edit Media and then Add Media. Then I just have to browse for my files. And I will add these additional files once I select them to that record. So here they've been added to the screen. I'm just going to click Upload. Okay. Now that this record has multiple images associated with it, there's a new Related Objects tab just above the metadata fields. Right here, it says 3 related objects. So if I select that tab, I can see all of the images. And if I want to rearrange their order, I can just drag and drop them around. I can also select and delete any if I like, or add additional files from this screen. I can also go back to the item record by clicking one of my cataloging screen tabs and see the different images in this record by using the arrows in the image viewer window here. And then, of course, you can save and publish your record once you're ready. If you'd like to create, oops, let me just publish this. If you'd like to create a compound object upon uploading, rather than adding images to existing records, you can do that by choosing all the related files at once upon upload and then selecting an option that says Group Compound Objects. So let me show you how to do that. I'm going to go back to my project, and I'm going to the Add button at the top of the screen, and I'll choose Upload Media. And then I just have to browse for my files. And right here, I have, I think, 8 files from an 1895 publication of the chapbook. And I'm going to select them all and choose Open. And then they're added to the upload screen right here. In Stewardship, I have the option of grouping files by file name. This means the files must be using a common syntax with a root underscore and then a sequence number. So you can see all my files here follow that structure. They all say chap underscore and then 00345, etc. So I'm going to choose group by file name, and my items will be based upon that root. I can see it happening right here. And then I'll click Upload. Once my files are uploaded, you can see them all here already together in the image viewer. The image is just being processed right now, but if I open it up, I should be able to see it in a moment. So they're already here in a compound object. Then I can proceed with cataloging as usual. Okay. So as a reminder, one more time, here's what a compound object looks like on Stewardship. This example is of a postcard from the Smithsonian collection, and the front and back of the object is here within the same metadata record. Okay, so the next object type we're going to look at is containers. So let's go back to the slides and let's talk about containers. So as a container refers to a group of published items on JSTOR that are considered a set. So you might want to create a container for content like periodicals, so your users can see all issues of one periodical file or one periodical title grouped together. Each container has a container page with container level metadata. As shown here, this is a screenshot from JSTOR of a periodical called the Indian Ladies Magazine from the South Asia Open Archives. The container page is similar to a collection page, but it is only information for the items within the container. The container page displays the container name, fielded information about the container, a cover image, and institutional branding. So let's take a look at this container on JSTOR. Here it is. You can see the fielded metadata, and this is your choice of what metadata you'd like to include for the container, and the institutional branding from SAWA. Below the metadata is a search box, which helps you search for the contents of this container only. And then below this are all of the items in the container, which are the issues of this periodical. And if I open up one of them, you'll see that this is a compound object. So I'll see the thumbnails of the object like we just learned how to do. Okay, so let's go back into stewardship now to build a container. All right. So as I said, a container is a group of published items on JSTOR that are part of a set, like issues of a periodical. So for this example, I have a couple of issues of a education periodical called Gateways. And I am going to group them together in a container. So the first thing you do when you create a container is you create a container list. This list is not the container itself, but it is a list of containers that you will have access to when cataloging. So Gateways may be one of several education journals I have in my library's collection. So my container list is going to be called Education Journals, and then Gateways will be just one of the terms on my list. So to create the container list, you go to the cataloging tools here in the sidebar menu, and then you choose manage lists. Excuse me. Then you go to the actions menu at the top and you choose new. And we're going to be creating a new container. And then you click next. And I'm going to name the container, as I said, I'll name it Education Journals. And I'll click add container. So next, we're just going to be setting up what metadata about the container displays on the container page, just like we saw with the Indian Ladies Magazine container page. These fields are what we're determining now, what we would like to display here on the container page. So I will go back into stewardship, and by default, title is created as a field, but you might want to add additional fields to display on the container page. And all you do is select the add field button and then choose what fields might be relevant to your content, such as language, publisher, and so on. So I'll just add a couple of fields for now. So first I'm going to add a list field. And I'm going for the list field, it's going to be language. And I'm using a list field because we have a list of languages available for all stewardship users, and it's called shared shelf language. And I'll create that field, and I'll just create one more right now. I'll call it publisher, and I'll just keep that a text field. Okay, so my container will have 3 fields that display on the container page, but I could always go back and add some more. Okay, so next you will add terms to the container list. So the terms will be the names of any containers that you create. So like I said, I have a journal called Gateways, so that will be one of my terms. So I will click the Terms tab at the top, and then I'll just click Add to enter a term. So my title of my journal is Gateways, and it's an English language publication, so I can access that list. And I can add the publisher. And sorry, I see that it's cached here, so I'm just going to copy it. The Waldorf Early Childhood Association of North America is the publisher. Okay, and then I'm just going to click save. If I had additional journal titles I wanted to enter, I could do that here as well and continue to add titles to my container list. But I'll keep this for now because I just have the 2 journals to catalog. Okay. And if you like at this point, you can upload an image for the container, and that will display on the container page. And if you don't add an image here, the first record that you link to this container will be used as the image. So to add an image, I'm just going to open up the term, and I can upload it right now. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have it ready here. So it will just be added on its own once I catalog the first term. Sorry about that. Okay, so the next thing you do is you need to add the container list to your stewardship project so you can populate the container. So I'm going to go back to my project. And it's this one. And go to the project settings for this project. The project settings button is at the top of the screen here, and go to fields. And now I'm going to add a field. So I need to have a field to hold the container that I just created. The field type is going to be a list field. And then for the list selection, you'll choose the container, which in this case is the container I just created called Education Journals. You'll add a field label, which can be the same as the container name. So I'll just call this Education Journals. And then you have to make sure you add the new container field to your cataloging screen so you can access it when cataloging at the bottom of the window. So you can choose whichever cataloging forms you want this to appear in. And then you just click Create. So the last thing you have to do now is map the container field in your project to the JSTOR field called Container. And that just ensures that the container will publish to JSTOR. So to do this, you go back to Project Settings where we are, and then Targets. Select your target and choose Map Project Fields. Now you scroll down to the container field, which might be at the very end or the very bottom. And there it is. It says it's unmapped. So I just have to choose this link button and choose to map it to the field called Container. And then I click Update. Okay, so now that is all set up. If I have additional education journals I would like to add to that container in the future, I just have to open up that list and add new journal titles as terms. I don't have to go through the entire process again. So now to add any items in my project to the container, I'm just going to find the records. Yes, always make sure you save. I'm going to find the records. I have two right here, and I'll edit them together. And these are both from this journal called Gateways. And I will go all the way down to the container field. Sorry, I have a very long metadata screen here. There it is. It's the very bottom, and I'll click Add Terms. So there's my Education Journals field, and I will click that these are part of this publication and click Done, and then I just have to save and publish my record. Okay, so here is an example of a container on JSTOR. Let me just drag this over to the right side. Okay. This is from Johns Hopkins University. They have a collection here called the Dreyfus Affair Collection. And within that collection are multiple containers. So for example, this is a container called Journal Covers. And if I scroll down, there are three containers, sorry, within Journal Covers. And I can see here the fielded metadata at the top of this container, and then at the bottom, the items within that container. Okay, so let's go back to the slides, and we're going to talk about the next topic, which is compilations. A compilation is a thematic sub-collection within a larger JSTOR collection. So in other words, compilations are often created to group content by subject matter within a published JSTOR collection. Compilations may contain compound objects, containers, and individual items. Any stewardship record can be assigned to only one compilation. Each compilation has its own compilation page, which displays the compilation name, description, cover image, and institutional branding. So the screenshot here from JSTOR is of a compilation called Doris Rodriguez, which is within CUNY's collection called Dominican Artists in the United States. And I'll open it up in JSTOR so you can see it a little better. And here it is. This collection, this is a collection page. It consists of several compilations, and this is a great example of compilations if you'd like to take a look at it. There is a compilation here for each artist within the collection. So each artist gets a compilation page like we just saw with their photograph and a description of their work. So you can browse the contents by artist, by their own compilation, or you can go to the main collection page where I am right here and scroll down to see all of the individual items within the collection. So here at the top, I can see that compilation I showed you the screenshot of if I want to see this artist information. And then I can scroll down to see her work. Okay, so let me jump back into stewardship to show you how to build a compilation. Okay, back in my project. So as I said, compilations are used to group together items thematically on JSTOR. So for my example, I have a number of exhibition brochures and gallery guides in my stewardship project, and they're from different museums and feature different artists. But if I want to group them together in my published collection for users to browse gallery guides, I can create a compilation to link them together. So creating a compilation is a little bit simpler than creating a container. What you have to do is you add a compilation term that's relevant to what you're cataloging to the global JSTOR compilation list in stewardship. And the term that you create will be the name of your compilation. So to do this, you go to cataloging tools on the left here in the sidebar, and then again, manage lists. And then you'll find a term that, or a list that's already there called JSTOR compilation. It's right here. And then all you're going to do is add a new term to that list. So I'll just click add, and I can enter a term, enter a name. So for this one, I'm going to call it gallery guides. And name is the only required field here, but we also recommend adding a description, which will appear on the compilation page like we just saw. So I will just for now add in a description here. Okay, and then click save. You can add a cover image to your compilation page by uploading an image to the term record after saving your new term. So if I want to upload an image, I'll go to media and upload media. And hopefully I have this one ready. I'll just add this image of a gallery guide. And this is what's going to appear on the compilation page. Okay. So the next thing you have to do is you make sure you map the compilation field so the compilation will publish to JSTOR. Go back to your project, and then let me go back to my project. Here it is. And then go to project settings, and then targets again, because we're going to map the field. So I'm going to select the project and choose map project fields. So the compilation field should map to the JSTOR compilations field. So scroll down to find the compilation field. I might have scrolled past it. Sorry, I'm scrolling kind of fast. I'm not seeing it, so I'm going to actually refresh because I think I missed it. Okay, let's scroll. All right, I think I did something wrong here. Let me make sure I have the field set up in my project. Okay. Let me go to my target and map my project fields. Okay, I think, did I forget to add the field? I'm not sure what I did. Let me just make sure what is happening here. Sometimes if things are not appearing as they should, sometimes it's helpful to refresh. But what you're going to do is you're going to select the target, go to map project fields, and you should see a field for the compilation that you just created. And then you're just going to click to link it to the JSTOR compilation field. And for some reason, I'm not sure why it's not showing up right now, but we have a link in the handout that shows you step-by-step how to do this. So my apologies. I don't know why this is not showing up right now. But we can move on and maybe it will appear. Okay, so now to add content to your compilation, all you have to do is select the appropriate term in the compilation field in any relevant record. So I'm going to go back to those gallery guides that I have in my project, and I can just select them all at once and click Edit. And if I scroll down, I'm hoping I see the compilation field. I'm just not sure why it's not appearing. If I find the compilation field, oops. You know, since I have Remus on the call, I'm going to ask if they can see something I'm doing wrong, because I'm not sure why the compilation field is not appearing. Remus, do you have an idea of what's happening here?
You saw it in your fields, right? In the tab on the project settings?
Yeah, let me just go up and double check. I thought I had added it, but maybe I did not, and maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, do you want to, it's named Compilations, right? Do you want to Control F and see if it pops up that way?
Oh, good idea. Oops. Oh, maybe I didn't add it and I thought I added it. All right, my apologies.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Let me back up a little bit here. Okay, so I'll be adding a new field. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just lost in my notes here, so I'm just trying to find where I am. Okay. Okay. All right, I'm just going to add that to my cataloging screen. Sorry about that. I must have skipped a step in my notes, and then I got a little lost as I was looking at them. So the compilation field has now been added to my project, and it looks like it's not on my cataloging screen. Oh yeah, it is. There it is in my cataloging screen on the gallery guide. So I'm just going to make sure that I map that field. Here we are in the mapping screen of my target. I will just scroll down and it is unmapped. So sorry, this was what I was looking for before. I just got a little bit lost. So gallery guides just needs to be mapped to the JSTOR compilation field, which is right there when I map it to JSTOR. And I will just go down and click update. And now it's been mapped. So I'll just save my mapping. And all right, so now let's go back into the project. And I will select the records that are of the gallery guides, and I can edit them all together using the bulk editing tool. And once they open, I'll go down to that field at the very bottom, and I will link this to my new gallery guides compilation. Okay, and then save it. So then when these records are published to JSTOR, they will appear in the gallery guides compilation. So my apologies for getting a little bit lost there, but hopefully that does make sense in the end. I just had to add the field, which I somehow skipped that step of adding the field for the compilation. Okay, so let's see. So that is working with compilations. So after publishing, the compilation will appear on JSTOR. And let me show you another example of an already published collection with compilations right here. This is from Yale in the Rhode Island Furniture Archive. It's a great example of compilations because they have many compilations of furniture types. If you scroll down, you'll see beds, looking glasses, chairs, and so on. And then if you just click one of these, you'll open up the compilation page with the description of the compilation and then all of the items below. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and talk about our final topic in the slides at first, which is about the Collection Builder tool. So Collection Builder is a tool you can use from within Stewardship to quickly create and populate a new project with an existing spreadsheet of data. Unlike the typical Excel workflow, which involves importing data into an existing project that you first have to have had created, Collection Builder will create a new project for you and import the metadata at the same time. The tool walks you through uploading the data and creating the project fields using your existing metadata. You can then refine the field types and apply stewardship functionality like linked authorities to the fields. Once your project has been created, it's just like any other stewardship project, and you can edit the data you imported or add additional records as needed. So let's go back into Stewardship. Okay. So in Stewardship, you will find Collection Builder from the home page, not from within a project, since we're using it to create a brand new project. So right here on the home page, you can choose this button, Import Metadata with Collection Builder. And then you just find your spreadsheet. And here's mine, and click Open. Then you just have to click Next, and it will start to analyze the data that you're importing and build a project based on that. So just give it a moment, and then you'll see the fields that Collection Builder has created for your project based on your data. So there they are. So here you can see all of the fields the tool has created for your uploaded data, and scroll down to see all of the fields. I just had a few fields in the spreadsheet I uploaded, along with example values from your data. So this is not a screen where you edit the metadata itself. It is a place to review the fields that were created for the project. If you'd like to change any field types at this point, you can using the drop-down menu next to each of them. And there's definitions and examples of the field types here on the right if you'd like to refer to those. You can also add linked authorities to any fields of that type. So for example, here I have a field called the creator field, and Collection Builder has determined it could be a linked authority field. So now I just have to add the source that it will refer to. So for creator, I'll choose shared shelf names and click add. So in the future, I can link to shared shelf names from within that field. For location, I can do the same thing. I can add Getty's thesaurus of geographic names. So when you're ready, after reviewing your fields, scroll down and click Next. And then the project will be mapped to a new JSTOR collection for publishing, but it won't be published yet until you're ready to publish. You have to actively tell it to publish. And then once the project is mapped, you'll be setting up the collection page, just like you set up any other collection page when you publish a JSTOR. So we'll just give it a moment. So really, Collection Builder is like a shortcut for creating a collection. If you have data that's ready to go and you don't want to bother with all the steps of creating a collection yourself. So now I'm just setting up the collection page. Okay, so I just have to name my project, name my collection, sorry, and add a description, confirm the URL, and so on. So I'm going to name this collection music. And I can describe the collection if I like. With this will show on the collection page. And the collection URL is automatically created here. I can also choose the download size for the contents of the collection. If I want to restrict downloads or have a smaller download size, I can. And I can also choose here whether I want the collection to be available only to members of my own institution or publicly available on JSTOR. And then I just click Create Project, and the project has been created. And if you are using a duplicate URL, you'll be warned. Okay, so once you click that Create Project button, your stewardship project and JSTOR publishing target have been created. So this is now like any other stewardship project, and you can go ahead and upload the media files for these records. If you click that Add button and upload media, they should match automatically based on the file names. But do keep in mind that the capitalization must match exactly, and that includes the file extension. So sometimes you might run into an error because .jpg is not all in caps or vice versa. So the images are, some of the images are being processed, and you can always check for errors and fix things later. It's just like any other stewardship project now. Okay, so we have a lot of time left for questions. Remus and I will turn our cameras back on and see if any questions have come in, or if you have any questions, feel free to enter them now.
Yeah, we've gotten a handful. The first one I want to start off with, someone asked about adding unique alt text to individual images in a compound object. I can answer this one, Elizabeth, if you want me to. Okay, thank you. So right now, in stewardship, there isn't a way to add alt text programmatically to images, right? So what we'd recommend you do is create a field, a custom field for that alt text. In the case of a compound object where you have multiple images, I would, in that field, just clearly label, you know, image 1 and then the alt text for that, image 2 and then the alt text for that, so that a person who is using that alt text understands that there's multiple images that you are adding alt text for.
Great.
All right. The next one, is there a way to automate creating lists?
I wonder if this user could tell us more about what they're looking to do. Do you have an idea of what they're indicating here?
If you're referring to sort of adding terms to a listed bulk, like via spreadsheet or something like that, that's currently not supported. You do have to add those terms individually. But if you mean something else, please let us know, and we can definitely elaborate. Can you differentiate between compilations and sets for folks?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So a set is, let me go back into stewardship. I'll go in that other project. So a set is really just a way of organizing your content within the project on stewardship. So the project side, not the published collection side. So if I had, I'm not sure if I have any sets in this project. I have a couple. So sets are just groupings that you make manually yourself within stewardship using the sets menu here. You can create and edit sets and add content from your project to the sets. Versus compilations are on the published side on JSTOR. So if you wanted to group together content into a set here to organize them before adding that compilation term, you could do that. That would be a workflow that might make sense. But when anything you do in sets will not appear on JSTOR. That's just if you created a compilation and added the items to the compilation.
Perfect, thank you. All right, another one about lists. Can a local list field with multiple values be browsable for the end user on JSTOR, I'm assuming, in the refine field sidebar? And if so, how?
I need to think about that question.
I think they're asking if there's a way to add custom faceting to your collection, like via a local list.
Oh, no, I don't believe that that's possible. Correct me if I'm wrong, Remus, but I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, we support there's the default faceting by resource type and such, and then if you use the ArtStore country and the ArtStore type. Do you remember what the name of that field is? The one that lets you facet by type of item?
Classification.
Classification, thank you. Those are also available to add additional faceting, but there's no custom faceting. Right. Let's see. One.
I see a question here about accessibility. Remus, I don't know if you want to take this on, but whether we are planning any workshops or webinars on accessibility requirements.
Sure. So I'm actually working on a webinar, a SQLite focused webinar on accessibility. However, there will be chunks of that webinar that are not specific to SQLite that will be applicable to everyone, whether you are a tier 3 participant or not. So that recording will be available as well, and we'll very clearly in the recording delineate between the stuff that is applicable to all users versus, or all stewardship users versus the stuff that is SQLite specific. Someone asked, I think this would be good to clarify, like, can you have items in both a compilation and container? Can you have the same item in multiple compilations and containers? Let's maybe clarify sort of how the relationships there.
Yes. I'm gonna look at my notes because I want to make sure I get this right. So each item can only be in one compilation. Am I getting that backwards? I need to look at
other way around.
Each item can only be in one container, but items can be in multiple compilations. The words are so similar that it's sometimes hard to remember which is which.
Absolutely.
And of course, you can have nested compound objects within containers or compilations. But yes, an item can only belong to one container, but can belong thematically to multiple compilations.
Great. And just to add to that too, on the user's end, an item that's in a container or compilation will come up as an individual result in a search. So if a user does a search, they'll still see those items. They're not hidden forever in the container, which is nice.
Yeah, that's a good distinction.
Someone asked, can you retroactively create a container list and fill it with existing containers, like in the example of education journals as the container list and gateways as one of those containers in that list? Could you create an education journal second, or would you have to create that? I assume you mean list term first. I'm not sure that first.
I mean, you would have to have the container list to have a term to add it to. So in this example, gateways was the term, so the name of the periodical, and the list, the container list, was called education journal. So you couldn't create the term for the periodical without it having a list to belong to, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So no, you couldn't do it in the opposite way, because first you have to have a container to hold those names of periodicals or whatever the things are that you're cataloging.
Yeah. This is a good question. Can you explain the difference between containers and compilations? So what might work best for an exhibit or gathering content for a class session, things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think a good way of thinking about the difference between the two is, like, a container are things that are already linked together as a set, like they belong together. So if I had, I could keep using the periodicals example, but it's a really clear example, like this is one title and here are all the issues of that one title. So the container contains, the container term is all of the metadata for that title of a periodical that's relevant to all of the issues. A compilation is more content that is related by subject or by theme. So if it's for an exhibit or content for a class session, I would feel like a compilation would make more sense there, because they're not necessarily tied together by what they are, or by, they won't have common metadata, not necessarily. So it might make more sense to do a compilation for thematic content.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I would also add that Yale collection that you looked at earlier that I shared the link to in the chat. really rich example of how you might use those two together, because that collection is so, they'll have a tables compilation, and then each of those items is a container of a specific type of table. So you can see there's sort of the higher level grouping of an item, and then the specific, these kind of share attributes, so they're containers, as a non-periodical example, because I feel like sometimes those are hard to come by.
Yeah, this collection is a great example of those two content types. And if you're not sure, when you're on JSTOR and you're not sure if you're looking at a container or compilation, a way to kind of cheat is to see if there are these metadata fields at the top of the screen, because sometimes they look a little bit similar. The compilation will just have that description, at this level of tables, there's the title and then the description and then the content below. And the container will look more like this with the metadata fields that are clearly delineated, along with the branding and the sample image.
Following up on that question about creating a container list retroactively, just to clarify the function of the list in this context. So is the list a grouping tool in this context?
A grouping tool. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. I mean, the list is where you create the terms for the container. So I mean, essentially it's a grouping tool because all of the items that have that term are grouped together by using that term. But you're not actively, when you create the list, you're not yet grouping the items until you link them to that term. I hope that makes sense. I feel like it feels very abstract when you talk about it, but when you do it, it makes sense.
Yeah, the term essentially tells the JSTOR side, this is what the container is going to look like in the metadata it's going to have, right? And then you add the items to that term so that it knows what items to put there.
And you might not be in a position, I feel like containers seem very complicated and lengthy to set up, but once you create a container that you will add multiple terms to, you probably won't be in a position of creating many different containers, because you'll be adding, container lists, sorry, because you'll be adding the terms, which are the containers, to the existing list, but you first have to have that sort of higher level container list that you'll add the terms to, which are in, for example, kitchen tables, dining room tables, or periodical titles. It's just the initial setting up of that container list is kind of the most complicated part.
Yeah, and I'll add to that because I think this is helpful to reiterate. So there's a default for compilations. There's an existing JSTOR compilations list that you must use, right? So any compilations you make, you're going to add those terms to that JSTOR compilations list. You make your own container list, as Elizabeth demonstrated. You don't need multiple, though. You could just have one container list for your institution if you prefer to work that way. That's kind of up to you if you want to, if you know you're going to have different types of containers for periodicals versus other content, you could set up different container lists, but you don't have to. You could just have the one, because the term itself is what actually creates the container.
Yeah, good point.
All right. Are there any other questions?
Well, we have a moment here waiting to see if any more questions come in. I wanted to just mention our next monthly training will be on February 24th at 11 a.m. Eastern, and that topic will be project administration. So I can put the link to register in the chat now if you're interested, and that's all about setting up user access and permissions and so on. So I will just type that in right now.
Yes. All right. And another question, can you confirm that an item record can be used in multiple compilations within a collection?
Yes.
Yes.
And one record can belong to multiple compilations. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. You can just give it another couple of moments to see if any more come in. Okay, well, we can give you a few minutes of your morning back. Please remember, once this webinar closes, we appreciate if you take the quick survey. It's just a few questions that appears once you close the webinar. And if you'd like to view the recording or share it with your colleagues, the link to this recording will be added to the LibGuide handout that we've shared the link to within a day or so. And the link to that is also going to be in the email that you get in an hour from us. As I said, our next training will be on February 24th. So if you're able to attend, I look forward to seeing you there. So thanks so much for your time and attention. And hopefully we'll see you next month. And thank you, Remus, for all your help.
Thanks,
Thanks everyone. Bye.